Thank you all for joining another XGenAI Roundtable Discussion number 5. We've had a continuous conversation around artificial intelligence and machine learning solutions, the cost of implementing artificial intelligence solutions, and cost of maintaining and sustaining these artificial intelligence solutions. So sort of going with a theme of how it works when you want to adopt an artificial intelligence solutions, implement it, and how do you sustain and how do you scale it over time? You need a vision for the organization. Where is that organization is today with artificial intelligence and machine learning, or this technologically period, or in capability that business brings to the environment, right, or to the industry. You need a vision where you would like to be, not just a year from now, but 5 years, 10 years from now, right? And if that's such a lengthy vision, what we can start with, which is the easiest vision to achieve, is the demand signal. Right? What is the demand signal like from the endpoint users, or the buyers, or the service receivers? Right? If there's two types of vision, the long-term visions and the demand signal vision, what's the demand signal is telling you to accomplish today, or if you're really interested, you step back one more and say, what's the most viable product MVP that I can utilize using artificial intelligence, machine learning, large language models, these other data capabilities that I already have in place. I already have it in the shelves. I just have to really take it out and start utilizing it. These three types of visions that I just mentioned, which one do you go with, right? Regardless of which one you pick, you always have to reverse engineer into a point that is today, right? So even if you want to solve a demand signal that the endpoint users are asking you to resolve using artificial intelligence and machine learning solutions, you really have to figure out how to reverse engineer from there to provide that solution. And all of this is incorporated within the cost justification, your financial situation, your ability to maybe do a CapEx and OpEx analysis to understand what is your return on investment like, right? Just because there's a demand signal does not necessarily mean a few $1,000,000 or a few $100,000 later, you do not have a product, and that product is no longer scalable or sustainable. It sort of is a product that made a lot of marketing promotions for you, but not necessarily materialized in your bank statements. So having said that, we want to maximize return on investment and have a great impact in our AI machine learning project, right? It has return on data, just like it has return on financial investment, monetary investment. So my name is Asif Haider. I'm advocating for upskilling for AI machine learning specifically. I also host the AI machine learning podcast, AI, where we have a formal sort of discussion about artificial intelligence with many perspectives, and we like to reach out to the military veterans who are either transitioning out of military or thinking about a new career, or just in military, they want to understand how the AI machine learning can improve their mission capabilities or improve their day-to-day operations. So having said that, there's a lot to discuss, so let's get into it. First, like I said in the very first slide, that we are trying to maximize a return on investment for artificial intelligence and machine learning. This year in 2024, there's been substantial amount of budgets that's been put out. Some of them starts with B, some of them starts with M. Whatever the number is, these investments really have to land in the right spot at the right time and have the right people engage with the best process in order to deliver whatever the technology solutions or services that is being required, right? So effective strategies is just a first level of ideation, right? If we were to strategize, we ask better questions, and better question is literally what artificial intelligence and machine learning requires, not only as a product, but also for the development aspect of it as well. So that effective strategies will incorporate an MVP all the way to a long-term vision to say, how do we strategize, how do we reverse engineer it and create some benchmark for us to achieve. So I'll talk a little bit about the real world case studies, which I hope you'll find interesting, because what you see right up front is not necessarily what you deliver on day one. So there's a version iterations that you have to work with in order to have these case studies become part of your reality and your day-to-day operation, or the demand signals that you're meeting with your endpoint users. There is future trends, of course, as always. But what I would like to do is speak of that future trends using the current day logistics that we can map and say, these are the logistics that we have in hand, and these are the future trends that is most likely to come out because of the capabilities that we already have today and some of the capabilities that we're looking to make a reality in the future. So we'll talk a little bit about the future trends. However, the return on AI ML investments is the key focus here. So significant operational improvement is a best way to understand what is that KPI that I need to establish as part of my effective strategies, and how do I deliver a return on AI ML or return on data using that effective strategies, so that way in my operational environment I can see some improvement. So that means you see a clear productivity gain and improved bottom line. Speaking on that effective strategy, you do have to ask yourself some questions. And now these questions, I really want to emphasize, these questions are your $1,000,000 questions, right? That ability to answer these questions is, very little part of your return on investment. Asking the right question and fine-tuning those questions for your best benefit analysis, cost analysis, is tremendously important. Answer is okay, but question is really important. And I cannot emphasize that enough, not just in a strategic environment, but in the MLOps environment. MLOps is super reliant on the right question, so that way a team can get that question in the right frame and answer it accordingly using the data at hand, or data that is easy to reach for, right? So question is very important. So here we are talking about effective strategies. So in accuracy, how well does this model predict or classify, right? If you're looking at supervised learning is about classification, but what you classify makes a huge difference, right? Because if you're classifying something that is a shiny object on top of a mountain versus classifying something that is in the mud in your business process, something that is not really easy to target, but it's very important for your organization, is the type of accuracy question you want to ask. And these questions are not necessarily something that's going to make sense to everybody outside of your organization, and sometimes even internally within your organization. And there's an efficiency process. How can I do this MVP overnight, or if not in certain time frame, so that way I can do version iteration better. I can build on top of what I've already developed. So mind you, these questions are associated with your cost, and cost is how do you keep your man hour, your human capital in check? As in, you're not distracted from your day-to-day operation, but you're incorporating these sort of AI ML ops into your day-to-day structure, and not having a expensive cost center that does not return on investment. So you have to have some efficiency. It's just not a matter of time, but human capital and the technological debt. So cost reduction, is there a tangible decrease in expenses? That's a good question to ask, because if it's a clear productivity gain and then improved bottom line, how do you capture that KPI? What are some of those questions that you have to ask once you start delivering, right? But you should be asking that questions ahead of time with some due diligence built into it. So you really have to audit your design that you're putting out in order for it to be developed, right? For your ability to say, let's spend some man hours in this topic here and pursue it and see what comes out of it. So these questions are really something that you have to audit ahead of time rather than audit afterward. And most of the industry practices are showing a weakness in development that is being audited afterward, rather than to be developed rather to be audited during the design phase. Well, customer satisfaction, I will leave it up to you. But as you can understand, customer satisfaction is not necessarily customers that are outside, as in customers within your organization, maybe your endpoint user, or your internal operations team or marketing team or your finance team. So as you're listening to this conversation, as you're listening to this AI ML discussion, you really want to learn more and see some of the specific details that was discussed earlier. Feel free to go back to our roundtable discussion 1, where we discussed budgeting, and we discussed in the last week's discussion specifically about large language model, right? Some of the considerations that you have to have as a project manager, right? Some of the discussions that you have to have as a CFO, some of the discussions that you really have to present yourself for the amount of understanding that you have on your business process as a CIO or CTO, right? How do you justify this cost? How do you ideate in a way that is suitable for everybody to really understand? And where's that baseline of understanding, and how do you not only create an MVP, but match that MVP to the long-term visions that you have as far as your organization goes. So all the use cases out there, and we'll talk about some of the case studies, are very attractive, very promising, yet it might not be suitable for your organization or for the workforce that you're currently working with, as in for your colleagues or the future of your business. This might not be a good fit. So really have to understand these topics. Feel free to go through this roundtable discussion, so that way you can get more in-depth understanding of what it is that we're trying to achieve here. What you see in front of you, I will really just break it down with one single keyword for each of these bullet items, right? If it's repeatable, redundant, or dangerous, right? If you look at repeatable, redundant, and dangerous, what you will think that is most likely I will have to go after these redundant tasks as my first MVP. Well, redundant in all senses, redundant is not necessarily the same as repeatable, right? But however, redundant task does require a human in the loop or a human supervision. And how do you reduce that human supervision versus in a repeatable process, you completely replace the human interactions and say these processes are so repeatable that it's just not worth having a man hour or human capital invested into it, right? So for you to address something between the repeatable and redundant is a great approach. However, most likely we are looking to approach this dangerous process. Let's say, for example, you are in a steel mill industry and you're in manufacturing and you're thinking of a dangerous process and you want to replace it. That's not necessarily the case, because a dangerous process is probably the most sought after product, yet that might not be the first use case that you want to go after, because a lot of the organization, historically speaking, has spent millions of dollars in projects, yet nothing to show for it. And what I mean by that, you can look at Gartner, you can look at some of the other reportings that mention the majority of the AI project do not actually end up deploying. Because where it was designed and how it was audited and how it was developed and how it was supposed to be delivered, and by the time it got to deployment, it had to be stopped and never being actually deployed. There's ways around deploying these topics, but it's always worth looking into it ahead of time. And this time of the year in 2024, you have a lot more support than industry had back 10 years ago. However, it's a long discussion, but think about it from a repeatable, redundant, and a dangerous process, and try to solve that by understanding the difference between redundant and repeatable, and then approach dangerous as you feel more comfortable with AI machine learning investment. Going into the case studies, as I walk through the case studies, I will try to get you to start thinking about it from a different perspective. Because like I said, these are the case studies that you can find very available and very easy to access, right? I did remove the organizations that are part of these case studies, the ones that has been successfully implementing these case studies. But what the reason behind I put this out there is that think about this as a long-term solutions, a long-term vision for your organization to get to a point where not only are you in a healthcare business, maybe you are in a business where you do have to detect early. you have a need for early detection, and you have a need for reducing the cost by doing this early detection. So in a manufacturing shop floor, it is really important that you understand the difference between your life cycle for first 6 months versus the last 6 months of year 2024. And how do you do early detection in order to say, if I was to budget for the end of the year, this is how I will budget it, because these are the sort of information that I have in front of me. And I not only have to budget with early detection, but reduce the cost, because in first 6 months, we've already invested this much into this shop floor processes. And without a redundant application of the same, we can save some money. So you have some early detection capability built into it. So not necessarily all the case studies will applicable to your organization, but you have to adopt it with that mindset and work reverse engineer it to a point that is suitable for your business process. Again, I'm not mentioning the name, but you can kind of imagine who would use this type of technology and how they are benefiting from it, right? So if you're looking at it from the perspective of, I have inventory, I have these, enterprise warehouse management, I have these warehouse deliverable, I have, acquisition process, and I have some sales and delivery steps. How do I improve that? Right? How do I improve that for the customers I have? So if you're an IT department and you're dealing with EWMs and IM system, and you have a customers that is requesting that, please, can you make this any easier for us? Right? I can give you one quick example of something that is not necessarily something in everybody's purview, but how many car is parked in your parking lot, right? Could be a part of a solution, but you're not thinking it that far, right? Or maybe that is the first solutions that you have to address. How many cars do you have parked in your parking lot? Not necessarily car that you're selling, but the people that are parking in your parking lot, right? If you think about it from some different perspective, you can say, well, these are the enterprise level solutions that cost so much, but these solutions here are maybe a few $1,000s and does not require that many man hours, but it feeds into a system and does a whole lot for us that otherwise we will have to spend a lot of manual man hours in order to accomplish the same sort of results. And going into finance case studies, look, I think false positive and saving transactions and billions of transactions that are happening throughout the day, not just nationally, but worldwide, is something that is very attractive of a use case, but not necessarily use case that you should invest in right off the bat, right? You have to really understand what it is that you need. So if you're not in the finance industry, but you're looking to detect anomaly, you're looking to understand the difference between anomaly that happened 5 years ago versus anomaly that's happening today. Is this repeatable? Is this something that you have to really pay attention to? So think about it from the cybersecurity perspective, right? When you have digital forensics that you're accomplishing, if that digital forensics was to be done in a short period of time, how do you address artificial intelligence and machine learning as part of the tool sets that you use in our digital forensics? If it's not digital forensics, how do you detect early? How do you detect early out of all the false positives and say, well, this one is really something that a human should look into rather than just artificial intelligence itself? Don't let the artificial intelligence fool you, because artificial intelligence can be sabotaged and created in a way that it will overlook important details. So again, talk about manufacturing. That's because manufacturing shop floors are very static, and they always have some of the use cases that is actually universally applicable, right? Because that's literally what's happening. So one of the terminologies I always use is that it's the problem of pickup and drop off, right? Every single problems that you're trying to solve, if you look at it from the pickup and drop off perspective, you really get to understand the small nuances in between the pickup and drop offs. So if you're looking at the possibility of your industry having some need for improvement, the efficiency, but the operational efficiency does not really equate to something that you should do today versus you should do something in the future, right? Because what's available as far as subscription goes or buy goes or development goes, what's available today might be worth it for you to just hold back on, right? Even though you can say 30% improvement in operational efficiency is possible today, well, what does that cost look like by the time you do achieve that 30% improvement in operational efficiency, right? Did you spend more than that 30% that you saved? Is some of the good questions that you have to ask, or say, let's shelve this idea and work on these other MVPs that we can work with today and have that be the reality of tomorrow, because it cost a few $1,000s, but we actually gained $50,000 back from this investment. Um, Really, I mean, if you look at the description, you can tell who did that, right? Who used it. So if you yeah, I'm not trying to get into the details of who does use this, but it has proven to be wildly successful. But if you think about the dynamic pricing, one of the things that I will tell you exactly is the supply chain planning. Be it you're a banker, be it you're an industry where you don't think about supply chain, but if you think about it from that pickup and drop off issue, you really can understand that these dynamic pricing could be beneficial to you as a person who's able to say, look, I know how much the product will cost me 6 months. In 6 months, that raw ingredients that I have to buy for whatever service that I'm providing. But what if the raw ingredient prices change 5 months from now? And how do I calculate that into my next 6 months of operation? And then find a tool set to say, there's a peak time for these products. And if there's a product that it goes on sale, maybe that raw ingredient is on a discounted price, how do I capture that, let's say midnight on a Friday night, right? Because if for some reason the price is low at that time of the day or that time of the week. So this is some of those things that I really think organization will benefit from. One thing I can tell you, the audit is super important as you're developing and designing. But if you were to audit the systems that you already have in place, where you think you are capturing some of this cost management, yet you look into it further and you realize that cost management never really been paid attention to, and it's actually a cost center that is losing money rather than gaining money, because uh, cost centers that's losing revenue versus gaining revenue. So there's a whole lot of calculations that needs to go into any sort of use cases. Discover those use cases. As you discover this use case, audit the other solutions around that discovery, and then understand there's a change management that needs to happen, and how do you engage with that change management is very important. Um, so if you are following us on our roundtable discussions that we've had so far, this is our fifth one. You will understand the pattern here is obviously the same. It's about understanding your people and understanding these people, what sort of process they will engage with, and how does that process provide a technology solutions or service solutions, or just any sort of demand signals that you're trying to meet. Whatever the demand signal is what's being delivered through the process by the people that you're engaging with. So really think about strategic planning, think about your team, think about your ability to evaluate. Who will be the one that evaluates? What sort of hats do they wear? Multiple hats that a single person will have to wear in order to have these methods of MLOps become reality in your organization. There's return on data that is very important, and not necessarily everybody in your organization understands data the same way. So that's where the upskilling comes into play, where you upskill everybody for the data purposes. I mean, if you haven't already, I mean, it's been the conversation for the last 20, 30 years about big data, small data, data for your organizations, data efficiency, data intelligence, data acquisition. All of these are part of MLOps. So you already have these sort of people in your organizations that understands data very well, but you have to really make them understand that there's a different hat that they have to wear in order to approach MLOps using their previous knowledge that they already have, subject matter expertise that they bring to the table. If they're a data owner, they're a business process owner, how do they all come together and talk about data from a baseline perspective? So that way everybody's on the same sheet of music, not necessarily leaking data or missing on data that is very vital to your MLOps. I really do take a fast pace in these discussions, because these discussions are very choppy and small. What we really have to do is actually brainstorm the hard way. Brainstorming the hard way means we push ourselves to a point of not being comfortable, right? I've seen in many examples where the boardroom literally locked their doors and said nobody leaves until we figure this out, right? Well, we had triages that happens in a very I should say sophisticated manner, right? I'm a military guy, so I've been through some of these meetings where things got really uncomfortable. But that uncomfortable meant that we actually came together much closer than where we were before this conversation, right? So it's a managed conflict, if I may say so. And the future trends that I'm calling for is not technological; it's very psychological. It's more about how do we understand not only ourselves but our organization, our colleagues, and collaborate in managed conflict manner, right? I can discuss more about that, but that's a whole another chapter to open up just about managed conflict. Um, uh, so when it comes time to adapt, um, adoption is not that easy. It's a process that we're not so familiar with, and it's a very very uncomfortable topic to talk about. Something that you're not familiar with, yet you have to live with it for from now on and until the end of the days, right? It's a very uncomfortable topic. How do we collaborate? How do we brainstorm? And how do we upskill ourselves to feel more comfortable with it? It is a very sensitive but required topic. So we can talk more about that as days comes. But ultimately, what we would want to understand that the MLOps is here to stay. MLOps is what we will deal with, just like we have dealt with DevSecOps, DevOps. We will deal with MLSecOps if that's the case. But MLOps is here to stay. It's going to replace a lot of the formalities that we have seen previously, but it has to be adopted for the purposes of MLOps. Um, it's a it, it's a process that we're very familiar with, but just some of the tweaks that we have to make in order to make MLOps a reality is the big challenge in 2024. I don't see it being a bigger issue in 2026. Because what we have seen previously with other adoption is that these adoptions were slow and the urgency was not there because the whole industry was not really craving for those adoptions. These days, according to some of the big consulting firms, I think Ernst and Young mentioned the other day that 99% of the CEOs that they're discussing any topics with are super concerned with artificial intelligence and machine learning. And that is something that we probably have seen in the past, but not to this level that is 99% of the CEOs are concerned with. This adoption is highly sought after. There's a lot of holes in this adoption. There's a lot of this vulnerability that has to be really assessed, and the risk management has to be written out for this MLOps purposes. We have seen that already before ChatGPT. Companies have lost uh, millions, billions, right? Because of a strategic planning that did not start off very well, and it was not auditable. And not being auditable meant that they weren't able to deploy this AI machine learning solutions. Alternative to deploying that solution was to go back to the drawing table and literally minimize that artificial intelligence solutions to uh, um, another fashion and deploy it in a different manner. And some of these artificial intelligence have came across useful, but not necessarily a good return on investment. And when they did they did interact in an environment, they did not perform, and they underperformed from what previously was expected from these deployments. So it's in 2024. It is very vital that we engage MLOps, not just technically, but from the psychological perspective, right? How do we make MLOps a very fast adoption, psychologically safe adoption, and understand that the workforce that is engaged with MLOps have certain topics that they need to discuss and have that uncomfortable discussion of adoption and make it worth the workforce's time, the man hours and manpowers in order to develop this MLOps capability. So Really appreciate you taking the time and investing into your future, future of MLOps, future of your workforce, future of your business, future of your organization's competitive edge that will be required in coming years and decades. But one thing I will say, as you reach out to us, it doesn't have to be naturally about LLMs. LLMs is a very hot topic, but you can reach out to us about any AI machine learning topic. uh, Beyond change management, beyond AI, we are a supporter of your organizational success, and that's what we're here for. So feel free to reach out. We are here, a short phone call away. We can make a quick introduction and get you started on this path of MLOps journey. Thank you so much and have a good week.